get started. And before we do start, I want to recognize that this meeting is taking place on unsurrendered, unceded Algonquin and Anishinaabe territory. Councillor Curry has indicated that she may be slightly delayed this morning and will join virtually when able. With that, I'll pass it over to Chris for the roll call.
Councillor Brockington. Councillor Brown.
Here.
Councillor Curry. Councillor Devine.
Here.
Councillor Hill.
Present.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Present.
Councillor King. Here. Councillor Luloff. Councillor.
Good morning, Chris.
Present.
Vice Chair Carr.
Present.
And Chairman Ard.
Present.
You have quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chris. Are there any declarations of interest today? Seeing none, nice to see you, Councillor Brockington. Confirmation of minutes are the minutes 13 of the Environment and Climate Change Committee meeting of Tuesday, the 18th of June, 2024, confirmed. Thank you. There are a number of responses to inquiries on the agenda this morning. Just give me one moment. See if that's better. Yeah, we're good. Okay, so there are 4 responses to inquiries on synthetic fertilizer, tree trenching, green procurement, and the status of water main infrastructure. I haven't heard from members wanting to lift any of these. Are there any requests to lift any of these items? Okay, I'm not seeing any. The next substantive item is the solid waste services bylaw update. There is a direction for this item, and I understand there is one request to speak. So, and I also, just to staff, I've canvassed a couple of members about the item itself. It might make sense to have a very brief presentation for 5 minutes on this item, and then we can get into the delegation and any discussion that members may have. So I'll just ask staff to come up and give a very brief presentation on the item. And I think before we do that, we can likely carry some other items. There is the Solid Waste Services Long Range Financial Plan, 2025 to 2053. We have no staff presentation, no registered speakers, and no additional correspondence. Are the recommendations carried on 6.1? Thank you. The status update, Environment and Climate Change Committee inquiries and motions for the period ending the 3rd of October, 2024. Is this item received? Thank you. There's a number of IPDs on there as well. We'll move back to the staff presentation on the solid waste service bylaw update. Thanks, Andrea and Shelley.
Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm joined today by Andrea Gay-Farley, who is the Program Manager of Waste Collections, Programs and Customer Service, to discuss the proposed solid waste services bylaw. Next slide, please. As the chair mentioned, this will probably be one of the shortest presentations you ever received by us. So today we're going to provide an overview of the current solid waste management bylaw, the report recommendations, a summary of the proposed updates, next steps, and we'll have time at the end for discussion and questions. I'm now going to hand over the presentation to Andrea to go into the existing bylaw recommendations and a summary of the proposed changes.
Good morning.
Thank you, Shelley. The current solid waste management bylaw, we can go next slide, please, sorry. The current solid waste management bylaw was enacted by council in October 2012 and remains in place today. The bylaw serves to guide the administration of the city's waste collection, removal, and disposal programs. It includes a definition of waste streams, levels of service, collection schedule, acceptable material, waste limits, associated fees, operation of the trail road facility, and enforcement standards. Since the bylaw was last fully reviewed and updated in 2012, Solid Waste Services have received council approval on several policy and program changes with associated bylaw impacts. These include reports on provincial blue box transition to individual producer responsibility, and most recently, policies and programs approved through the Solid Waste Master Plan, namely the multi-residential waste diversion strategy and the recently launched 3-item limit for curbside residents. While minor amendments have been made to the bylaw over the last 13 years, it has been done piece by piece without a full review. Additionally, the solid waste management bylaw was prioritized through the corporate bylaw work plan for a fulsome review by Q4 of this year. Next slide, please. Solid Waste Services staff have reviewed and updated the bylaw to support administrative and operational needs, including updates to align with new waste legislation and industry best practices. Additional updates that allow the bylaw to reflect council approval programs or policies have also been made. Staff are recommending that the existing solid waste management bylaw be repealed and replaced by the proposed solid waste services bylaw. The report specifically requests that the Environment and Climate Change Committee recommend that council approve the updated solid waste services bylaw substantially in the form attached to document 1 and to be in effect December 2nd this year, and authorize staff to finalize the proposed solid waste services bylaw as further described in the report. Next slide, please. Many updates to the proposed bylaw are administrative, and these include revised language and definitions for better understanding and alignment to current waste legislation and solid waste services operations. Examples include alignment of the bylaw to IPR transition period and to organizational changes made since 2012. The bylaw has been restructured to align more clearly with current solid waste service delivery model, which includes curbside, multi-residential, and public space waste collection services, the operation of Trail Road, and all enforcement activities related to each one of these services. Provisions have also been strengthened or added to address identified enforcement gaps, including addressing the issue of illegal dumping in public spaces. Next slide, please. In addition to administrative improvements, the bylaw has also been updated to align with council-approved policies and to further support our operations as these programs are implemented. There is alignment to the new bylaw, there's alignment of the bylaw to the new 3-item set-out limit policy that includes agriculture exemptions, expansion of the yellow bag program to curbside households, and expansion of the special consideration program to include non-hazardous household medical waste. Provisions have been added for mandatory organics in new multi-residential buildings to support the rollout of our city's green bin program. And a new section has been added for public space waste collection services to align with the new expanded service mandate and to address illegal dumping issues anticipated to potentially increase with the new 3-item limit policy. Through this project, a procedure has been documented to ensure the bylaw is regularly reviewed and updated to align with solid waste operations and to reflect any current waste legislation and new policies approved by council. Any future bylaw updates will be brought forward to council as required. Next slide, please. Upon approval of the report today, the proposed bylaw will be considered by council on October 30th. With council approval, staff will finalize the bylaw and follow a standard bylaw update procedure by submitting and seeking approval of set fines through the regional senior judge of the Ontario Court of Justice to support the full enforcement of the bylaw. Requested fine amounts will be in line with existing set fine amounts established under the solid waste management bylaw. It is expected that review and approval of the set fines could take 4 to 6 weeks. Finally, the bylaw will come into full effect on December 2nd, of this year. Next slide. That brings us to the end of our presentation. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you today.
Thank you very much for that presentation and all the work to get to this point. Obviously, a lot of this has already been discussed by committee and council, and this is the enacting bylaw. We do have one delegation that has requested to speak to this item and another item previously. That was a response to inquiry. So I'll just ask that James Scott McKillop, if you'd like to delegate directly to the item. You've got 5 minutes, and it has to be relevant to the item in front of us.
Hello? Yes, is the item in front of you the solid waste master plan and or synthetic fertilizers? When I ask that, I believe that is what you're talking about here today. And so thanks for having me again. My name is James Scott McKillop. I'm here today as an ethics committee of concerned citizens who are concerned in several aspects of the Ottawa smart city, including your solid waste master plan, your drinking quality management systems. Today, I'm concentrating on how these plans are involved with not only the solid waste master plan, but synthetic fertilizers and the Internet of Living Things. I provided some slides today. Do you have those available?
I'll just check with the committee coordinator. We should have, if you provide a PowerPoint, we should have it.
I provided them. Oh, there we go. So if you could go to slide 2, please. Slide 2 is from Policy Horizons in the Canadian government. And the lady writing these documents, her name is Crystal van der Elst. And she is claiming that the Internet of Living Things includes Internet of Plants, fertilizers, water strategies. She also, if people read that entire document called Biodigital Today and Tomorrow on our government website, they'll see how this is also related with human augmentation, food technologies, national security, including biometrics, next digital economy, and smart city infrastructures. So if you could go to the next document, please. Okay, so that gives you a little history of the Standards Council of Canada.
I'll
On
just
what
ask you
their
to relate
thoughts.
your comments to the report itself, which is the solid master plan.
This is all
bylaw
regarding your
implementation.
solid waste master plan and the international standards regarding your solid waste master plan, sir. From the IEC, the ISO, the
Not hearing anything
IEEE.
related to the item, sir. I'll ask you to get to the item, or I'm going to ask you to stop speaking.
Why do you not want people to understand the standards regarding your solid waste master plan? Could we slip to
please
the next
speak to the
slide, please? This is Francois Collier, SCC Governing Council member. And what he's writing up here is how all these technologies, including the wastewater, but including graphene, which I provided on another slide, seems to be a fertilizer here in Canada. They get into several technologies, how this is involved, not only environmental monitoring, but wastewater management, GMOs, cellular agriculture, smart farming, precision farming, and several other technologies. Next slide, please. Okay, so there we go. That is some information regarding that graphene and fertilizer that, according to the IEC in the past slides, is involved in biomonitoring. They also get in this, how this is involved with plants and several other technologies, including blockchain, quantum technologies, and next slide, please. Okay, so this is our National Research Council of Canada. And they're saying how our wastewater strategies in this document are involved with creating nanotechnologies, bio-based technologies. It's hooked up to the Internet of Things. If people look closely at that first screenshot, it's also hooked up to artificial intelligence. This involves our solid waste master plan with anaerobic digestion and actually several other technologies on this document. If people look into food technologies on our government website from the National Research Council of Canada. Next slide, please. Okay, so what we got here, well, I think it speaks for itself. If anyone's reading that, it talks about how quantum technologies are involved with both waste and fertilizers. I don't think people understand how quantum technologies would be hooked up to this, but it is part of the Internet of Plants. Next slide, please.
You've got 1 minute remaining.
Perfect. Okay, here we go. This is at the World Government Summit where they're talking about agriculture 4.0 and how they're going to bring a whole bunch of different technologies to change the food supply. They wrote this in 2018, and now we're here dealing with these technologies that they also say are involved with nanotechnologies, water treatment, solid waste master plans. People have to read that entire document to understand that. They should look it up. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're back at the IEC, and Francois Collier, SCC Governing Council members, work on smart farming. This includes a whole bunch of different technologies that if people look in at the IEC, they bring up how this is also involved with human augmentation. They get into cyborgs even if people look this stuff
Thank
up.
you very much. For your
And next
presentation.
slide,
You're-
please.
You're all done now. Thank you. That was your last minute. We're gonna
Perfect.
take the presentation down, sir. If you come in the future, I'm gonna ask you to speak to the item directly, or you will not be allowed, you will not be allowed to speak unless you speak to the item directly. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Standards regarding the science that you're bringing in, okay, and you're not telling people what's actually going on.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I'll see if there's any questions for you. You may have questions that committee members want to ask you. I'll just see if there's any questions.
Ralston King should be the one asking me questions, considering he's a biometrics expert.
Okay, there's no
And,
questions for you.
He understands the technologies I'm actually talking about, and I know Ralston's good
Okay.
enough to actually explain this stuff to people.
Okay, thank you, sir, for your delegation. I appreciate being here. There are no questions. All right, so the next, the item remains on the agenda. I know there is a direction to staff from Councillor Brown that I'll ask Councillor Brown to put, I guess, on the table now, and then we'll just see if committee members have any questions for staff. Councillor Brown?
Thank you very much, Chair. As part of the 3-item limit rollout, staff be directed to work with operators and solid waste inspectors to use their discretion for residents whose bins have historically been collected without issue, but are somewhat over the 140-liter volumetric limit, so long as the bins contain no more than 140 liters of waste, do not exceed weight limits, and continue to meet handle and removable lid requirements.
Thank you for that. Are there any questions or comments from committee members for staff and all the hard work they've done? Nope, just on the item itself. I believe we have, is it Councillor DeRoche? Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. If there's no members that have questions. With respect to the fines, the fine regime that you're moving forward with, what is the fine now presently for dumping in containers that that are on private property or on city park containers and what have you? So what's the regime right now? What are the fines? And is the plan to ensure that we have strong fines to discourage the practice?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. So I will ask my colleagues from bylaw in order to come up just in case there are other questions of that nature. But the existing fines currently range from $205 to $300 under the bylaw.
Councillor, if there's other follow-ups on that, I know Mr. Chapman's here as well to answer questions.
Yeah, I saw him come up, Chair. I just thought he wanted to add something. If he does, please proceed. I guess my follow-up, Chair, just lastly is what's sorry, maybe I missed it. What's the thinking going into to this exercise for the review of fines? Increase them, keep them the same, or something else?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councillor, for the question. The submission to the province for increase in set fines was submitted on Friday. So as stated in the presentation, we do anticipate 4 to 6 weeks to hear back from the province on approval of those set fines. So we are asking for a substantial increase to $500 to make it consistent across the board in all bylaws related to the garbage
Okay,
dumping. whether it
thanks
be
for
in
the
parks
update.
or private
Yeah,
property.
thanks for the update. I mean, I think we've all been communicating to residents about the limits, and so far so good, but there is concerns about dumping, and I've heard from private property owners that they're very concerned. And you know, I know we've been talking in a proactive way about the limits and why we have them, but I think we also need to talk about the consequences of dumping, and that there will be serious fines. So I appreciate the update. That's all from me, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Luloff.
Thanks so much, Mr. Chair. We're on week 3 now, and I've received a couple of notes from some constituents concerned that some of the bins that they purchased have removable lids. However, they're on like a hinge, so it looks like sort of like our green bin with a non-removable lid, but that hinge is in fact a snap-on hinge. Should I just be telling people to just remove the lid completely when they place it out? What's the best communication that I could be providing to residents on these types of bins?
Thank
Because
you
some of
so
them have
much.
received tags saying that it's an illegal bin.
Thank you so much for the question. Yes, it would be advisable if residents are able to remove those lids themselves. And when they're placing the waste at the curb, it makes it easier then for the operators to continue doing their work. And it is the most safe way for them to proceed with their work. Thank you.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thanks very much, Councillor. Councillor King.
Thank you, Chair, and I know that enforcement has been addressed, so I just wanted to look at the flip side around education. So as we move towards a more stringent waste management practice, as we've seen implemented, what kind of educational initiatives are planned to help residents understand and comply with these new regulations?
Thank you for the question. So I think we've been working very closely with our partners in corporate communications in order to put out videos, tweets, communication information that's on the web in order to help ensure that the residents understand. We have seen some good success with that, given that there is an increase in the number of green bins, blue and black bins that are being requested. So that is an indication that the communication information is going out. In addition, there are instances of tagging, whether it be for illegal bins or for over the limit, it is very, very small in comparison to the number of properties. So after week 1, we have 0.5% of properties that received a tag for illegal bins. And we've received about 1.7% of properties that were in excess of the weight item. So just as a reminder, over the 2-week period, our contractors and staff visit about 310,000 homes. So that is a very small percentage. We'll continue with the information and basically as we're rolling out the implementation, as we enter into different phases, we'll ensure to continue to be working closely with you so that council is able to leverage your newsletters and social media in order to ensure messages do get out.
We appreciate that work. I think that the first step is education, ideally before enforcement, and we'll look forward to more emphasis on those types of resources, especially through the councillors' offices. I think that residents do appreciate the information that we're able to forward on behalf of city staff concerning waste management practices. So really want to thank you for that good work, and thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Councillor, and I agree the education component has been exemplary. People are aware of it, media's been covering it, and councillors have all been very good about getting it out in their newsletter. So thanks to everyone for that. Councillor Kavanaugh.
Yeah, thank you very much. And yes, the education has been good. In terms of large families, that was one of the biggest complaints before. I don't know how many people are applying if they have a large household. Is there any statistics on that, or How is that going?
Thank you for the question. I think based on the statistics that we have for the number of tags issued for excess waste or illegal bins is a bit of a sense. And it just a reminder of the additional programs that we have with the expansion of the special considerations program for some of these large families, as well as the offering of blue, black, and green bins. And those they can put out as many as they like in order to try to support those larger families that could use those bins in order to increase their recycling and green bin use. So specifically complaints regarding large families, we have not seen.
Okay, thank you. I did have one complaint about a bin that's the right size, 140 liters, but the lid is a flip lid. I haven't seen it in person. Is it possible to remove those lids and still have it functioning?
Thank you for the question. It really does depend on the lid. So feel free for your office to reach out and we can have one of our inspectors go out and work with the resident in order to see whether or not that lid can be removed.
Yeah, I think they were tagged. I think they were asked to change it. But yeah, that was the complaint because they had to buy a new bin, so they were not happy. But other than that, it's been going pretty good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Devine.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to ask a couple questions with regards to the direction to staff from Councillor Brown. And generally, I appreciate the direction from Councillor Brown because it does speak to allowing a modest amount of discretion to set some reasonable expectations with residents. And I'm probably getting the same kinds of emails that Councillor Brown is getting, i.e. I stick within the limits, but I've got this bin that is 160 liters, whatever. So can I ask generally, does staff support the Councillor Brown direction?
Thank you for the question. Yes, staff support the direction.
Thank you. But just as to how the direction will be operationalized. So staff be directed to work with operators to use their discretion in these following manners. Briefly, can you give me a sense of how staff will be communicating this directive to operators, both our public operators and private?
Thank you, Councillor, for the question. We're already communicating this message both internally and to our external collectors. We had a kickoff meeting, obviously with the 3-item limit. We had follow-up meetings through the first 2 weeks to talk about how tagging was going and what they were seeing. The reasonableness is, can they lift it? Is it the 33 pounds? Can they tip it safely on their own? So if you can imagine a 240 liter with a hinge lid and one guy trying to tip that 10,000 tons a day, it's a lot. So the reasonableness is, can he lift it? Can he tip it on his own? And so if it's the 140 liters at the 33 pounds, we have not an issue. If it's a 160 liter with a removable lid and it's half full, again, we don't have an issue. It's when it's the bigger lids, they're attached and it's heavy. And that's where you're going to see the tagging occur.
And can I just, so what the direction allows for there, to use their discretion for residents whose bins have historically been collected with issue, but are somewhat over the 140 volumetric limit. Now, somewhat vague term, there are bins that are 240 liters that are not somewhat over. So I guess my question is, when it comes to allowing operators to use their discretion for saying this bin in this circumstance is fine, i.e. it's more than 140 liters, but the bin is more, but it's clearly got less, or it feels like it's 33 pounds. Will staff, are there still going to be, because what we have here is a plan that has very strict measures, 140 liters, 33, but we're allowing for discretion. Will we be asking operators to just, are we going to be setting limits for how much discretion they can offer, or are they going to use common sense?
Councillor, thank you for the question. If I may ask a little bit of latitude, we're going to wait and see how this goes. So we're going to see what the tagging looks like, what the bin sizes our people are setting out, and we're going to try and apply a degree of reasonableness to it. The idea is to keep our operators safe and to allow them to finish their job and go home to their families at the end of the day. And I don't mean to sound maudlin about that.
No,
that is the goal with bin size and weight.
And ironically, another thing I appreciate about the Brown direction is one question I've been getting from residents is that they have always, for example, I've got residents who only put out one bin per 2-week cycle. That bin had been a 180-liter bin. They are clearly within our toll per household limits, but now they're wondering, do I have to throw my bin out to the garbage? So might this prevent any kind of instances where we see bins that are outside our limit ending up a trail themselves? We don't want the bins to be in the garbage.
Counselor, we've been suggesting to residents they can use their bins for other things, storage, recycling, those kinds of options. In the end, if they want to throw them out and not look for a new home for them, then if they could end up a trail.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Tierney.
Great. Thank you very much. And there's some great information here. And I think it really does come down to education now. So I want to thank you for that. It's funny, I kind of chuckle. A lot of people, even before we started the program, people are saying there's dumping in the parks. Well, no, we haven't started the program yet. So clearly that has been happening for a while. So I think people are recognizing a lot of what has already existed. So when it comes to like park dumping in our municipal parks, for example, what's the process on something like that? I know you've already done it in the past where people from condo units go to a local garbage can all the time and there's an investigation, they get tracked down. Do they get fined?
Thank you for the question. So I'll speak to parks specifically. So as you know, we have our operators out there in some places daily.
Yeah.
And so they are really our first line in order for the observations, especially when they have to be making adjustments to the collection frequency based on illegal dumping. So we have been tracking some hotspot locations over the last couple of years in advance of this rollout. And with the approval of the 3-item limit with the additional solid waste inspectors, they've been going out in advance of collection day in order to try to find these instances of illegal dumping. And at that point, they open the bag, do a bit of investigation in order to see whether or not they're able to determine the owner of the waste. Always leading with education first. That in some cases, people may not realize that it's against the bylaw to be dumping their household waste in a park or any waste receptacle on private property. So for some people, once they know that that's the case, then they're more diligent and they're placing their waste at the curb on garbage day. In order to address the education, we did a promotion on illegal dumping, so some videos as well as an online form for people to understand what illegal dumping is and the impact that it has not only on private property owners, but just the enjoyment of our public spaces. So we have seen quite a few people using that link to upload photos and information. So then ourselves and our colleagues in bylaw, depending on where the instance of illegal dumping was, for that investigation to take place. In the end, if we do have the ability to levy a fine if appropriate.
Great. And that's a lot of, thank you. That is well explained. People know. So on that front, so what would you suggest, Chief Chapman, if someone is throwing garbage in and somebody grabs some photos of some individual throwing stuff in a garbage can, where do they submit it and what's the process? Forgive me, I don't know who I should speak to. You just look all nice and dressed up, Roger, so I thought it was you.
Well, and because I did ask him to come, it'd be kind of rude not to have him answer this
That's right.
question, right? But through the launch of the 3-item limit, there is a new online form trying to make it easy as possible for yourselves to be pushing out on social media for residents to access. So if they see it, they're able to report it. We have received people taking photos of the action as well as of what has been dumped for then either staff in Roger's team or mine for follow-up, again, depending on where the waste is located.
Right. Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair and Councillor. The only thing I would add is that, yeah, anything that can be added to the service request. So as Shelley's mentioned, photos are important. So when the officer conducts their investigation, all pieces of evidence are considered. And again, it's, enforcement comes in many different ways, including verbal warnings or written warnings. It's not always charges, but sure, depending on the severity of the incident and repeat offenders, then things would escalate to charges, obviously.
Great, perfect. I appreciate it. So go to 311, upload your photo, contain as much information as possible, and then there'll be an investigation launched. Brilliant. I love it. And I just expose that just to make sure people know, because that's one of the questions we get. The other one is related to the yellow bag program. I know there's probably still not pick up on it quite yet to the degree because it's still a new program. Do we keep tabs on that? Because we print the bags, obviously, we have our logo on them. Is there metrics that we can see kind of on a regular basis to see what the pickup is on the yellow bags? Is it something that can be provided in, forgive me, not a raw format, but open data format as well? I'm just looking how we could see this on a regular basis without having it presented every meeting, but it's something I am curious about for sure.
Great, thank you for the question. So that's one of the things that we're contemplating, how best to share that information with members of council, especially during this this important launch period. So we do have metrics on the uptake and the purchase of yellow bags from either city facilities or our partners, as well as I mentioned before, the tagging information. So we'll be looking to share that on could be like a 2-week cycle, aligning with our garbage pickups for members of council in order to have, so that is something that we can get back to you with those metrics.
I really appreciate that. Thank you very much, and good luck.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning to you. So I just want to go through the 3 types of enforcement just to make sure I'm 100% clear. First of all, leading up to the decision that council made, we were told about 80 or 85% of all households are already complying with 3 items or less. So when it comes to households that put out more than the limit, we're talking about a small segment of the population, and our focus is really on education on how to divert your excess waste, how to create less of it, buy tags, come up with some other means to dispose of your waste, legal means. That's one. The other is park bin dumping, which in my mind, I segregate from dumping. In my mind, there's a difference between, although it's dumping, taking bagged household trash and putting it in a bin that's in a park versus I've got drywall and in the middle of the night, I show up in the woods and I dump that. What is the difference in the fine between those 2 dumping examples?
Mr. Chair, Councillor, thank you for the question. Again, I mean, each individual case needs to be investigated, and depending on the circumstances, I'm not suggesting that, a verbal warning is issued on every investigation that we do. It's if it's significant enough, it's severe enough, certainly charges will be issued. And I think that's a perfect example of when a charge may be issued on a first offense. When we find evidence of who has dumped construction material, say in a city ditch or on private property or in a park, that would be an incident where we would likely go to a charge on the first offense.
Yeah, I appreciate hearing that. Obviously, I'm not going to direct you in this regard, but I think if there's dumping in the bins in parks, we have an opportunity to educate and inform and make sure they have got the the recycle bins and organic bin at home, as long as they're not a chronic offender, versus people who deliberately go out and basically destroy the woods or a park. They need to be dealt with. So just remind me, what are we going to hear back? I have a direction, but I'm not sure if it's necessary. What are we going to hear back as a committee with respect to metrics on dumping? Is there a requirement for staff to come back and give us an update a year from now, for example?
Yes, thank you for the question. So as part of our biweekly updates, we'll be reporting on metrics when it comes to illegal dumping as well. But you're right, Councillor, with the approval of the 3-item limit, we did commit to come back in 2027 with a fulsome update on how that rollout has taken place and the observations that we're seeing of the diversion, as well as the reduction in materials going to trail.
I have a draft direction I'd like to read in, and I'd like you to just provide some comment. And that is staff be directed to provide a report to the ECCC in October of 2025 regarding the severity of dumping, SRs created in the year leading up to the 3-item limit compared to the SRs created during the first year, strategies employed to combat dumping, and any other relevant information. So the reason why I'm considering this direction is for us a year from now to wrap our heads around whether this is a severe problem or not. Do you have, in particular, bylaw sufficient tools to combat dumping? I appreciate the more fulsome report in 2027. I would just prefer to get an update in particular on dumping before then. So can you just comment, would that be doable? We track SRs, put together a report by October of 2025?
Yes, Councillor. So my error, 2027 is when we're coming back on the solid waste master plan. We had committed as part of the 3-item limit to report back in a year, which would be in 2025. So it is our intent to report back.
Okay, then a direction's not needed. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Councillor. Thanks to staff for that. And yeah, it will be including dumping. And there was also a lot of metrics that staff are looking at even now that I've seen in response to media around the amount of waste received at Trail Road, dumping incidents. So you're doing a good job of collecting those statistics. Councillor Tierney on your second round.
Great. Thank you. And just as simple, it's education more than anything. So it's out here. A lot of people are taking their garbage bins and just filling them with stuff instead of the bags. Can you explain the importance of what goes in the bin and how it should be stored in the bin?
Thank you, Councillor, for your question. As long as it's a 140-liter bin, they're welcome to put individually bagged items in there, catchers, smaller bags contained within the bags. They don't need to put bags within bags if it's a proper sized container. If you're setting it out at the curb loose, it should be in garbage bags.
And I'm seeing some faces, and that's why I'm highlighting this. So the items that are in the bin must be in a bag?
The items that are in the bin must be, so they're not loose and blowing off the top.
Okay, so if there's stuff,
on it.
and I'm just looking for clarification because either I'm going to tell people, you know, pretty binary, make sure it's in a bag, or can they throw stuff in the bottom of their garbage can and then throw a bag on the top and then they'll still pick that up or not?
Yes, it can be loose items in the bin. It just has to be contained.
Okay, good. There was some confusion on that, so I wanted to make sure. Otherwise, I'm just going to tell people put it in a bag. But thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Councillor Hill, please.
Thank you, Chair. I know at a previous meeting, we discussed coordination on the rollout of the yellow bag program with Ocobia. I was just curious if we'd have the chance to do that or if that's part of the intent when we look at perhaps further reaching into the retail sector to help have a bit more diverse options for folks when they're picking up their yellow bags.
So we'll come back to you on the role of the yellow bag. So we have the yellow bag stock is available to us. If you recall, we had a bit of a delay in getting the shipment. And so we'll be working with members of council on what that formal rollout will be.
No, thank you very much. I just think we'll have more success if there are more options, especially in the retail space. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor DeRoche, your second round.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Very quickly, I just want to give an opportunity to staff to talk about how plastic bags are permitted in the green bin. That was the right decision of council to encourage additional green bin usage. But I continue to go door to door and people are surprised that they can put plastic. So I just think at every occasion, we should be reminding residents that plastic bags are permitted. It was the right decision. And it's unfortunate there was some mixed messaging on it, whether it was good or bad. But I think the decision helps us encourage people to use the green bin. So can you just briefly speak to what is allowed for plastic bags? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So I just want to make sure that I heard it appropriately, Councillor. So I think the comment is that for our education information, especially when it comes to green bin, that we're clear that plastic bags are permitted to be able to contain some of the more stinky stuff that goes into our green bin in order to help encourage residents to use their green bin. Is that the gist of the comment, Councillor?
It's very good and keep saying it loud and clear to folks because like I said, there seems to be continued gaps of awareness. So thank you. That's all, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that. Vice Chair Carr.
Hi, thanks. I just would like to follow up on my colleague's questions about the green bin and the plastic being allowed, which was a decision of last council. So it's my understanding that when we allowed that the diversion rate increased, correct, to the green bin?
Yes, that's correct.
Do we have any statistics on how much more garbage was then thrown out by the green bin facility itself?
If you could stay tuned, early next year, we'll have the results of our next 4-season audit, which is currently underway. And if you recall, the last audit was done in 2018, 2019. So we'll have a more fulsome numeric update after that audit is complete.
Okay, thanks. I did go on a tour of the green bin facility last year. It was a very pungent opportunity, I will say. I wish I'd known how much it was when my husband came home 2 hours later and informed me of how terrible I smelled. But the one thing I learned was that the amount of garbage that they're throwing out now there has increased significantly. So it'll be very interesting to see if it really was worthwhile or not. Anyhow, I'll await the audit with bated breath.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. So the report recommendations, are they carried? Okay, thanks to committee. I did want to just come back to item 6, which is actually the Drinking Water Quality Management System 2023 Management Review Report. There's 2 things I wanted to do here. One is just to thank staff for a recent tour that we went on with several city councillors to the ROPEC facility in Councillor Tierney's ward. Just an excellent tour and really educational for councillors, and want to thank the hardworking staff that are there day in and day out, and also the people that oversee it and provided such a great tour for us. It was excellent to do that. So thank you in particular to Jen Nielsen and the entire Infrastructure and Water Services department. The second thing is just that there was a naming piece here on 6.1, and I said the wrong name. So it's actually the Drinking Water Quality Management System 2023 Management Review Report. And was pleased to see that we have excellent high quality drinking water compared to the rest of North America, and outstanding results for 2023. So thank you to staff again on that report. So just want to make sure we carry that report. Are there any questions actually on that report, staff? Yes, Councillor Kavanaugh.
No, just a shout out to the staff. I mean, we just kind of gloss over it because it's so wonderful, but it really does deserve a shout out. And I'm so proud of the Britannia filtration plant and also Lemieux, but it's a lot of good work. And, you know, let's not forget how hard they work on this. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Great comments. So are those recommendations? Oh, sorry, Councillor Brockington. Yeah.
I don't have a question about the quality of the water, which is, as we know, fantastic and has been, but during some recent flood events during my tenure, the water filtration plant in Britannia has had to be sandbagged. And I've asked questions in the past about the risks associated to the plant should we have future flooding incidents. And I just wanted to raise that again through the committee, that I have not seen any major infrastructure projects announced that would help improve or lower the risks associated with flooding, and perhaps the GM could comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Regarding the 2019 flooding, the sandbags that were there, a lot of it was to protect the road, actually. So it wasn't necessarily related to plant operations. And so I don't know offhand, and I will look to my colleague Sue Johns as to whether or not we have, or Scott, if we have plans to do anything around the Britannia Road and Cassell Street, I think more specifically.
Just on that note, and I appreciate staff for coming to the mic, just to reassure the committee and the public that the plant itself, as opposed to the road, is not at risk or in jeopardy through future flooding incidents, that would be appreciated.
Yes, that is correct, Mr. Chair. The Britannia plant is built above that flood line, and so that continues to not be a concern.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just echo Ms. Rose's comments. And what we did after the 2019 flooding is we have detailed contingency plans. And it's a step-by-step recipe. So as those water levels come up, hopefully that doesn't happen, but should they rise again, that staff know exactly where to deploy various devices around both Lemieux and Britannia at various water levels. And when the water levels came up in 2023, we were able to pull those plans and start monitoring. We didn't have to deploy anything in that event, but we were prepared to do so. And we have the equipment purchased, and there's regular annual maintenance activities where we pull out the equipment early in the spring and verify that it's all in good working condition so that we're ready to roll if something is required.
Thanks, Councillor Brockington, and good inquiry. I remember sandbagging Councillor Kavanaugh's ward in 2019 for that incident, and glad to hear that staff have provisions in place to ensure safe drinking quality water, safe water quality for all residents in Ottawa. All right, are the recommendations carried? Carried. Okay, thank you. So we're moving on now. We did the status reports, the IPDs. There are no in-camera items. Are there any notices of motion? I believe Councillor Brown, you may have a notice.
I do. Thank you very much, Chair. And I know the clerk has it, so I'll ask that it be put up on the screen. Whereas in 2023, City Council approved the implementation of a 3-item limit, garbage collection limit, which was introduced on September 30th, 2024. And whereas agricultural operators who receive curbside collection have expressed concerns about how the 3-item limit and seasonal agricultural exemption are insufficient for disposal of unavoidable farm waste. And whereas additional work is required to develop an approach to solid waste management that fully considers the unique challenges of waste collection in rural Ottawa, including greater exposure to animals and the elements, extremely long laneways, and out-of-season unavoidable farm waste. Therefore, be it resolved that staff and solid waste services be directed to work with the Rural Affairs Office to develop a rural solid waste strategy that contemplates separate bylaw provisions for rural Ottawa that encourage increased waste diversion while accommodating the unique needs of rural residents and agricultural operators. And be it further resolved that until such a time as a rural solid waste strategy is implemented, staff be directed to work with operators to ensure that the provisions respecting garbage limits approved by Council in 2023 do not apply to unavoidable farm waste, which includes items such as feed bags, bale wrap, and twine disposed of at residential dwellings with farms that receive curbside collection, so long as these properties are also participating in waste diversion efforts through the use of green bins, black bins, and blue bins. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor. So that'll be considered at our next meeting of Environment and Climate Change Committee. I believe that's going to be Tuesday, November 19th. The committee meetings consider the portion of the 2025 City of Ottawa budget in addition to any other items. So with that, is there any other notice of motion? No? Other business? Okay. We are adjourned. Thanks very much, committee members. Oh, I'm sorry. We got an inquiry. Yes, go ahead. Councillor Kavanaugh, you've got an inquiry.
Yeah, thank you. This is related to wood burning fireplaces. Recently, Health Canada estimates indicate that home firewood burning is a significant contributor to air pollution-related deaths in Canada. It also leads to increased health issues, including acute respiratory problem, asthma symptoms, higher rates of hospital admissions, and elevated bronchitis cases in children. The full report is available on their website. Could staff please answer the following questions? Does the city monitor the impacts of wood-burning fireplace or stoves on air quality in Ottawa? Do other municipalities in Canada monitor the impact of wood-burning fireplaces or stoves on air quality? What kind of regulations does the city currently have for wood-burning fireplaces or stoves? Do these regulations include requirements wood-burning devices to be either EPA certified or compliant with Canadian standard CSA V4151-10? What other municipalities in Canada, if any, have regulations regarding wood burning fireplaces or stoves? can staff provide brief overview of these regulations? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kavanaugh. Any other inquiries from members? Okay, and so with that, we are adjourned until our next meeting. Thank you very much, members.